If you have said to yourself, I should write that, or if someone has said to you, you should write that, then I'm talking to you because you need to write. And that's why you're tuned in to yWrite. Hi, welcome to yWrite. I'm your host, Angela Grout. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of yWrite, where we learn why people are writing so that you can start to write your story today. Also, I have a guest in the studio today. Her name is Ilene Marcus, and her and I have gone back about 2 years now. We're going to find out about that. She is from the Berkshires, so she has driven into the studio, which is great. She is the author of, get ready for this title, Managing Annoying People. Ilene is an expert at solving everyday challenges. She has a great sense of humor. She's very well educated. She has 2 master's degrees, one in social work and one in public administration. So you're going to see why she's so talented at managing people. She's managed over 10,000 employees, and she has helped startup corporations and entrepreneurs. So, if you are a startup or you're an entrepreneur or an authorpreneur, this is the episode that you need to watch. She writes uplifting lessons about life, and these are a lot for people that are 60 and over, so there's some really great advice there. She is an all-star global facilitator, traveling all over countries to mentor entrepreneurs. And, she has a really big dog. and she just came into studio today. We're going to talk about that. So I want to welcome Ilene Marcus to the show.
Thank you, Angela.
Thank you.
So happy to be here.
So I'm glad you made it because I know you have a giant golden doodle and you almost got tripped today.
Yeah, he did not want to let me out of the house. I have to put this stuff on his paws in the, because he goes hiking and he's waiting for his hiking lady to pick him up. And he was like blocking the door.
I know. Too bad we couldn't have him in. I love dogs. I love dogs. So I'm really excited that you're in the studio. We met about 2 years ago with the New England Public Media. We were doing story slams.
Yep.
And during the story slam, of course, universe just gravitates people together. And I find out that, you wrote this book, Managing Annoying People, which of course the title just speaks to so many people. And sometimes it's the title that jumps out at you. And, it's like, you're so funny. You are funny. You're serious but funny. I mean, you have
serious but funny. That's important.
Yes.
People don't always get that, but serious but funny.
Yeah, I mean, you're not making fun of anyone.
No.
It's not in an annoying way. You're not annoyingly funny. But you wrote this book because you manage a lot of people, and people come to you with their problems, and of course when they come to you with a problem, they're annoyed.
Yeah.
And you need to tell them how to.
And sometimes I'm annoyed at them for coming to me.
Yeah. How did you get involved in, managing people and trying to problem solve?
It's a great story. I was really always on the policy end. I worked early in my career, direct social work practice, and then very quickly wanted to change the system, not just help one person, but change the whole bunch of people. And I was working actually for a mayor who wrote the
Mayor Rudolph Giuliani
when he was saving the world and
he wrote the foreword.
He wrote the foreword for my book. And I was actually on a team of policy people. We were looking at what the agency should do, this and that, and we were trying to operationalize programs. And then one night he came to me and said, Ilene, you got to go into managing. Things are not happening over at the social, welfare agency. It's a big budget chunk that we were spending on welfare. We were trying to reduce that. Can you please go over and manage? And I looked at him and I said, I have managed like 3 policy interns and like 2 administrative assistants. You want me to manage 10,000 people? And he said to me, management is all about giving direction, resources, and helping them get there. 5 people, 500, 5,000, and I will support you.
I love that. Giving resources, directing people, and managing them.
Right, and helping them through that, removing barriers.
Yeah.
And he did. He helped me get through that. Him and, the senior team back at City Hall really stood by me. But that's how I went from managing no one to 10,000, 0 to 60, and really learned those lessons. It's very clear. You give resources, direction, and you're and expectations, and then you can really manage through anything.
Yeah, I mean, I've always said, like, if you find there's a problem with something, don't just complain about the problem, find the solution. Yes. Tell us a solution and how we can use that solution to fix the problem. Otherwise, you're just annoying and you're just
Yeah. Well, and
about the problem.
also what happens is with annoying people, there are people that are definitely incompetent and nasty, and we see a lot of books on how to deal with angry people
Yes.
or how to deal with obnoxious. Annoying people can be obnoxious, but the thing about annoying people is they're not incompetent,
Right.
or they're not doing wrongdoing. A lot of times the annoyance comes from wanting to be helpful, but they're in your face. This is a personal example. A few weeks ago, I had a dinner party, and everybody started bringing the dishes in. And I'm like, no, I can't everybody's trying to be helpful, but do I really need to bring that
Right.
one dish in? Because I got a method in my kitchen,
Yes.
and they don't know it. And they're all, crowding me in the kitchen when I'm like, no, I can handle that.
Right.
So people want to be helpful, but they don't know how. So they're up your...
Yeah, they're right in your face.
Yeah.
So, okay. So as a writer, I want to ask questions because the writers who are listening, want to know. You have Mayor Rudolph Giuliani writing the foreword in this. I mean, forewords, not everybody has that in their book. Why did you think it was important to have it, and how did you ask him to do that?
Okay, so first I wrote the book because I was...
It's good to write the book before you ask someone.
Yeah, exactly. It's good to know what you're talking about before you actually ask
You just
someone.
write a forward for a book. What's about? I don't know yet. Just write
Well,
it.
I do say that's a little like buying a pair of shoes and building an outfit around it. So it could happen.
Okay, yeah.
But, I was coaching CEOs at that time in my life, and I would hear the same stories over and over again. This isn't working. I have to have a meeting after the meeting. I'm having the same problem with the same people over and over again. So instead of, coaching them through it after 3-6 months, I wrote down, here's the guide. You didn't listen last week. Give me a checklist. And I sent it to a friend, and who said, never send me anything written. But I said, I broke that rule. I was annoying. I sent it, and he said this had to be a book.
Yeah.
And so that's how it became a book. So I wrote the book, and I wrote it very much with real life lessons of people, here's the situation, people that are sucking your time, people that, are hitting you a certain way and annoying you, and what to do. And as I was writing it, I was thinking about where did I learn these lessons, and how can I was really thinking about how can I get the book a little more oomph.
Yes.
And at the time, Rudolph Giuliani was still, the mayor. He was just winding down from being mayor of the city. He was very well respected, and I worked directly for him for years. So I, wrote what you do. You write to his. His secretary. Yeah, his secretary. And I said, would he be interested? And he said yes. And, we drafted something. He made a few changes. I still have the original that came back with all the changes, and he was happy to sign on.
That's awesome. That's really cool. And it's really nice. I mean, I have a book that just came out this year, Being in My Breast, and I have a doctor from Arizona who had read it, and she sent me this beautiful email review and thing. And I said, this is wonderful. I go, could I use this as a forward for the book? Because It was so, and she's like, absolutely, I'd be honored. So, I do want to share with writers out there that if you're looking for someone to kind of endorse the book and write that, you just ask, ask. And, if someone has the time and they're passionate for you, they're going to help you, no doubt about it. And obviously everything you've done with him, shows.
And people, unfortunately live in a world where influencers have influence.
Yes.
So you want that for someone to publicly say, yeah, I get this person, I know them, and I can say they write what they preach and they're truthful. And that's really good.
Yeah. And I can see how when you said you sent the annoying email to the girl, and they liked it and said this should be a book. I mean, it is important. And I know so many times where I've had staff meetings, and it's like you have a meeting, you think you've discussed everything, you think you've told them what needs to be executed, and then after the meeting, you're having the after little meetings, and you're like, what didn't I cover in this meeting? And not that you want to be rude to these people, and not that they're being annoying, but it is annoying. That's, where I see you coming into play saying this is how you can stop getting your time sucked out of you.
Yeah, that's the team dynamic, right? And as the leader, we are setting the culture and what happens. But, you have people that are, just annoying because they are, right? They crunch their cereal too loud, or they bring in their files and they spill on the table, or, they don't shower enough, right? You just, or my favorite, the one who always says, what's the data for that? They ask the same question at every meeting. And at first you think they're really smart, and then you're like, oh my God, broken record. So there are people that are just annoying. Then there are people that are annoying because they remind you of someone, an aunt, a brother, a babysitter, a teacher, and they just get under an older sister. They get under your skin. But the most thing that people are get annoyed at are mirrors. They show us something about ourselves that we want to be and we're not. So they trigger us.
Yeah.
So it's really important, like when I think about this and I talk about why I wrote it to those team leaders, was your team is triggering you. Maybe because you like what they're doing, maybe because you don't like, maybe because it's something you did earlier in your career, and you have to look at your own behavior. So it's really about self-management and how they set the tone as the leader to deal with those triggers that they're having.
Yeah, I'm digesting that because it is so true that there is that mirror of what we see in other people that comes back at us. Like, oh, maybe it wasn't, maybe I don't even understand what I've asked them to do or something like that.
Yeah.
And now you've written this so that it does have some kind of humor in it, I mean, light humor, not making fun of people, but just, keeping it light. And that is important in the workforce. Like, why do you think that having a sense of humor is important in the workforce?
I think that lets people's guards down.
Yeah.
And I think, we think about comedians, right? Angela and I met storytelling. And when you can really hit on a truth that is so obvious that it's so funny, that's when you start to learn something.
Yeah.
So by using humor, you're getting them to let their guard down and to see a side of themselves that maybe they didn't want to own up to, but then hopefully they can change. I call it like laugh, cringe, change.
Like that.
Yeah. We hate when we see those things, but they're important.
Now, how long did it take you to write the book, and how did you get it to be published?
So it's a very interesting story. I wrote the book, probably a chapter a week. So I wrote the book in less than 4 or 5 months.
Okay.
And for most of us as writers, that's what happens, right? We have something in our head, and every day we say, oh, I'm going to write that. One day I'll write that. Maybe I'll write a blog. Yeah. The trick is to stop with the one day and just, I always say, stop starting, right? Yeah. Just start, right? Just sit down.
And everyone's like, will you write my story? How do I start? And I'm like, here.
Sit down.
Here you go. There you go.
She's handing me a pen.
Handing you a pen. Like, right. This is how you start.
And it's funny. Just say, I'm going to do it for 10 minutes. And then all of a sudden 10 minutes becomes 20 minutes and you get it down. Yeah. And once you start, there's a concept in the literary world. You write the book writes you, and together you build the business, or you build the model. So once you start writing, it flows. I self-published this in 2016, which was not heard of then. It was still very new. Yep. Why did I do that? You'll notice on the back of my book, I have the publisher, he's retired from HarperCollins.
Yeah. Okay.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
So I had some, I could have probably gotten it published, but I did not want to change a word. I wanted it the way I wanted it. And I wanted to really just talk about those annoying situations that keep us zapping our energy and time. And I wanted to keep it true to what I was writing.
Yeah. What she's pointing to on the back is from the president and publisher of Hyper.
He was hyper. No.
HarperCollins, and it says, Ilene Marcus helped guide me through an exasperating employee situation with intelligent and effective advice. This book should be a must read for all managers.
Yeah.
And definitely, like for me, I owned a flower shop for 30 years, managing the people, but even managing the events, and the customers because,
and the expectations,
all of that. And I used to read the E-Myth. And I used to buy Michael Gerber, and I would read Who Moved My Cheese over and over and over again. And I think this is one of those books that fall into that category because, there is a stage where, you can get burnt out. So when you read something that kind of lifts your spark again and makes you realize you're not so alone in the burnout stage, and that even though, people or customers or situations can be annoying, there's ways to work through it,
Yes.
and listening to someone like you who has the experience dealing with so many different businesses, it makes it relatable for every business.
I think so, and I hope so. I also say that, there's a million ways out there to fix yourself.
Yeah.
This book is more about what we were just saying. Just start doing it.
Yes.
Right? Like, this is how you take that action. Just walk into that meeting. This is how you start the conversation. Yeah. This is what you do in this situation. Because we all aspire to be better people.
Yep.
But it's the actually doing it.
So you're a problem solver, and not only, writing a book to help people on their own time, but you work one-on-one with them. So how does somebody get to work one-on-one with you if they're an entrepreneur or if they're, in a management position?
So they can find me online, of course. I'm associated with a lot of the entrepreneurial ecosystem. So I'm in a,
because I know you fly all over the
I
world
work for a company called Techstars, which is what they call a seed accelerator. So they help companies go from early stage to big. Actually, they start companies from what we call the top of the funnel. I have an idea, now what? That's the end I'm on, right? Nice. So I go into communities and say, I've always wanted to create this community map, or my community's missing this, or I solved a problem with my babysitter that I think the larger world could be, and I don't, a scheduling system, and I want to bring that. So how do I take a problem bigger? So that's what Techstars does. They take very early stage entrepreneurs who aren't necessarily technical and find them the right partners and help to grow their business.
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
I
love that even just for like the yWrite program, because technically I'm like, but solving problems, and of course we all have, things that annoy us. And I love that you're a problem solver, and I'm going to bring something up right now, which is kind of off the cuff, and it's not about writing, but it is about being creative and inventive and solving a problem. And one of them is like, when you're cooking, sometimes, when you're cooking a meal, it doesn't come out right because of the pan. We blame the pan. I'm going to blame
stove,
the
pan, the ingredients.
And you invented a pan. Now, remember her name, Ilene Marcus. Look at this. Check this out.
That is the Eileen pan.
This is the Eileen pan.
I'm off balance. So
it's just amazing. I'm going to put her infomercial in the links, but look at this. It's cooking it at an angle.
Because what happens, right?
How many times are we cooking and we're going like that? Sorry. Oh my gosh. I'm so sorry. I know that made a lot of noise on that table.
Yeah. But that's it. Of course, Angela got it.
Yes.
That's exactly right. And how many times does the recipe now say, pull it off the flame? And I'm like, which flame? How? And what about if I have 4 other things on the stove? Pull it off the flame is not a good answer anymore.
Yeah. Just the fact that, again, problem solving.
Right. It was very annoying, and I solved it.
I love this. I have an invention that I created. I don't think I can talk about it on the air, although if I do talk about it on the air, does that mean I own the trademark for it?
I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. I can help you bring it to life. Either way, offline.
Okay, offline. We'll talk about it. And I created it many years ago at the flower shop. And, it is something that, when you have an issue, you come up with the solution. And that's what I was saying. So many people will be, complaining about something. And, it's just tell me how you would want this solved.
Yeah. And I think what you're hitting on is the loop, right? When we're annoyed, when we're upset, when things don't go our way, we get so invested in complaining and talking and I like to say gathering data. I'm right? I'm right. Isn't that annoying?
No,
instead of actually problem solving.
Yes.
And that's what I'm about, giving you some ideas, cues, tips to say, how do I get out of this problem? My first advice is always don't avoid. The longer you stay in the loop, the worse the problem becomes.
Yeah, so let's bring this how to not be annoyed about writing a book. Because, people, like I said, people always say, how do I start writing my book? And again, I'm handing them a pen. This is how you start. Because if it's in here, like I always say, you're pregnant with this idea that you have to give birth to it. Even if it's a verbal birth and you're sharing it with someone, like when we do our story slams, and some stories are meant to be told orally. They don't need to be written. But if you're trying to share it with the world, unless you're going to go off and do keynote talks everywhere and meet the millions of people who are going to hear you, getting it into the pages of a book is the best way to get it into someone's hand, and it's a tool. So it's sitting down and coming up with the solution of how to not be annoyed by, oh my God, I got this book in my head and I got to get it out. It is that annoying thing, and sitting down to do it. When you were doing this book, did you come up with an outline so you knew okay, this week I'm working on this chapter because this is the problem we have to solve?
I love this question because this is what I learned in writing the book, and I think it is a good life lesson. that it doesn't have to be linear. Yeah. I was a very linear person. So the same advice I give people about, you know, we said there are different kinds of people that annoy you, right? Mirrors, reminders, just annoying people. Know what your trigger is. So you have to know who you are to write a book. Are you an outline person? Are you an idea person? Are you, if you write one story, then they'll flow. So first you have to know yourself. I'm an outline girl. So I had to write an outline. But what I also learned is I didn't have to know the whole outline. And when I started writing something, if it didn't feel right, I didn't have to explain it to anybody. I didn't have to talk to anybody. I could chuck it in the trash and go a different direction, which is not something that you can do sometimes in cooking. You're too far down the road.
Right.
I have too many ingredients
Yeah.
in. This recipe isn't coming together. How am I going to change it? But in writing, if it's not working. So I would say first, if you want to get it down, know who you are. Yeah. Tell a story. Write a one-page synopsis. Make an outline. Know which of those is going to help you go further.
How much input did you take from other people or editing?
So I did work with someone, I worked with what they call a book development editor, and that was very helpful. Accountability. You can find a group, you can pay someone. So we met every 2 weeks. So every 2 weeks I had a chapter written. I would give it to him, and he didn't make a lot of changes. I was, I thought then that, he wasn't watching, but I get now because I've dealt with other editors who make a lot of changes.
Yeah, no,
so,
and I did April Rain, that book. I did it that way, meeting with someone every 2 weeks and turning it in and getting some feedback back. And, I've done it a couple different ways where, just send the whole manuscript in, get it edited at once, doing it little pieces at a time. And you find what works for you.
Yeah, and I think a key thing that I've learned since is I belong to one book group. So there are book groups. A lot of people want to be writers. Yep. Find a book group. They might do prompt writing. Angela's going to give you a prompt as she does at the end of every episode. So you might start with a prompt, but just because Angela or someone gives you a prompt, you can still write about what you want to write and to your topic. But start from there and go bigger. But what's really helpful, I found, is when you have someone else read your words back to you.
Yeah.
When you hear how they sound, then you know if you're onto something.
I did a writing group once where we all hand wrote something, and then they were like, okay, hand your paper to the person to the right of you, and we're going to read it. Well, it was a failure because nobody can read anybody's handwriting. I get this guy's writing, and it was like hieroglyph. I was like, I'm so sorry. I'm like, I don't know what this says. So then it became like, okay, take your piece home, type it up.
That's annoying, right? So that's a group I belong to. We have to submit it, 3 days before. It has to be a certain amount of words, and then we each read each other's writing, and you definitely hear it differently.
Yeah. I mean, I've even had my computer read it back to me.
Yes.
Which is interesting, I don't like the tone. It's annoying, the tone.
It is. And it emphasizes the wrong things.
Yes, but again, it's like bringing it back so that I can hear the words that I put out. Like, is that how I wanted it to be understood?
Yeah. I'm writing so I have written a lot of leadership and a lot of how-to, like for 60 and Me, and a lot of problem solving. And I'm finally getting to write some fiction that I think is going somewhere. So I'm writing this story about this guy who had a hip replacement, and all of a sudden it's like got some, it's a little like Da Vinci Code. It's got some hidden code in it and all this. And this book, this is the first time I'm having the experience, is writing itself. I don't exactly, because I show up, I know I'm going to write, I have an idea, and then I just clear myself and I just write.
Yeah.
So that is the holy grail, I feel like.
Yeah, I do that a lot. Like, I make my appointment with my muse, sit down and say, okay, here you go.
Yeah.
The tools in my hand come through.
So remember that. You don't have to know what you're doing. Trust the process. I mean, I hate that. I'm a social worker who's process challenged. I want to get to the end, but you've got to trust the process.
So can we go back a minute to the 60 and Me? Because you are writing uplifting stories for people 60 and over. How did you get involved in that, and where do
So when I wrote the Managing Annoying People, I was only 55, and they contacted me. She said, I'm starting this blog. So I'm one of her earliest bloggers. She's a community of about 500,000 women. Wow. And so I write how-to stories like, how not to lose your valuables on vacation, how not to get in your own way, which is really the topic. So that is 60andme.com. And that they can find me there. Managing Annoying People, I usually come right up. And now the Ilene Pan, ILEAN -pan. Also, you can find me.
Makes you cook to be leaner too, right?
Right. Oh, yeah. You should see the fat. Like, you don't cook in the fat. The bacon, don't tell my cardiologist. The bacon sits up here and the fat is down and it gets nice and brown.
Yeah.
So it's makes it easier, and you can turn it with one hand, which is very important for me.
So, and did you brought this to a manufacturer?
No, actually, I did a small batch fabricator, is what they call them. So I sourced the pan, and then the rim is made in America, and he you could see welded.
Yeah, I love people who create, make things. I'm putting it here so it doesn't make a big noise on the table. But
we like big noise.
We like big noise. We like to make a big noise. We like to change the world and try to make the place better.
Right.
That's what we're doing. because the world doesn't have to be annoying.
It doesn't. And it's those, I always like to say when I help people to change, it's those little course corrections that pretty soon you take a little change, you're facing a new direction. Yeah. So it doesn't have to be a big step. It just has to be write 5 minutes, write a little chapter, solve something different today. Like how about that thing of like putting the spices in your kitchen, the one that you use to the front instead of reaching back for them,
Yeah.
Like,
because people, sometimes people want to alphabetize them, but it's like, well, you're alphabetizing them, but time is way in the back,
right.
and you're using that all the time.
Exactly. So. How often are you using that allspice, except when you're making the apple pie, right? Yeah. So it's like making your life easier.
Yeah.
So those little steps in writing, in creating, in cooking, in every day.
Yeah, this is great. I could talk to you for hours because I just love your energy. I love your personality.
Right back at you.
I love how you tell stories. And again, we did the New England Public Media Story Slam twice together. So yeah, maybe I can even post those story links. I don't think the new one's out, but the old ones are, where I did my chimera piece because I ate my twin in the womb. If you haven't heard that story. So yeah, no, this is gonna be a great episode. Everyone's gonna love watching this. Where can they get your book? And we know we can get the Pan Eileen.
Yeah, you can get the book at Amazon.com. Okay. If you put in Managing Annoying People, and my website. My name is Ilene, Ilene Marcus, and you'll see a link to the Pan and a link to the website and a link to my consulting.
Okay, yeah, because especially if somebody wanted to get you to come out to their business to talk to them and to give a talk, because obviously you must give.
Yeah,
talks.
That's my favorite thing to do, to talk to the team, because it's never just the leader, it's always the whole team.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so very much for coming in today. I love that you did. So thank you so much. And I want to thank you, the listening audience, for tuning into this show every week, subscribing on YouTube or Spotify or Amazon or wherever you're watching this. And, if you're watching on your local cable channel, thank you for doing that, and thank them for having yWrite on here. This is the time in the program where I'm giving you your writing prompt because, you've now listened to why Ilene Marcus has told her story. And, if you have that story inside of you, and maybe it's just a story, that's for you personally, but maybe you're going to write a book too. We're going to use the writing prompt today that, isn't about annoying, but I want to make this humorous. There's got to be something in your life, someone in your life, a situation, an experience, a holiday, or like I said, a person that's annoyed you. I want you to take 10 minutes. I want you to write about that and what is funny about it. Find the humor in it. Maybe it's every time your husband goes out the house, you have to fix his tie because he's put it on and it's crooked. Who knows what that annoying little thing is, but write down why it's annoying and maybe what you did to fix it and why it's funny, because that's just another way of getting a story on the page. So thank you for tuning into yWrite. Thank you to Studio 954 for letting me put on another episode. We are in the hundreds now, and thank you again. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you next episode of yWrite. I'm your host, Angela Grout. Bye.